All right. So I really have been looking forward to this next segment for 2 years. We are so excited by the work of the Data Integration Task Force. The task force came together in 2012 to work with Read On Arizona on how to help make data that impacted early literacy more accessible to our Read On communities as they develop their early literacy action plans. With the strong collaborative efforts between many state agencies, and major kudos to the Arizona Department of Education, First Things First, and the Department of Health Services, we did a literacy data inventory and asked them to share, for the purpose of informing our Read On communities, some of the data that we had identified. Now, some would have stopped there because they shared the data. We had these massive spreadsheets, but we didn't stop there. We said we needed it to be digestible and easy to navigate, or we knew that our Read On communities wouldn't really be able to use it. And then I was lucky enough to be governments was giving on some of their tools around mapping, especially transportation trends and housing. I know you're asking, what's an Arizona Literacy Director doing in housing and transportation? But miracles can happen anywhere, and this project is one that proves that. So a wonderful partnership was born from that conversation, and we were so happy to have Maricopa County Association of Governments as a partner that really helped us take this to where we didn't realize we could go. And out of that partnership, a tool called Maplet was born. Maplet is a statewide interactive mapping tool to visualize data that impacts early literacy. It's a one-stop resource located at readonArizona.org/Maplet, and it provides communities with geographic views of select data for all Arizona public and charter elementary schools and preschool locations. It was designed to facilitate data sharing and identifying gaps and supporting ongoing improvements in early literacy, and its purpose is to help communities, school districts, charter schools, and other organizations make evidence-based decisions on how best to allocate their limited resources to continue to improve literacy for children. Now, I cannot say enough that the key partner in making this happen was Maricopa Association of Governments and our state agencies and the collaboration that evolved out of this data task force. So I do give a superhero shout out to the team over at MAG, Dennis Smith, Amy St. Peter, Vern Wolfley, Anna-Bob Bagley, and others I know behind the scenes who really did make my dreams come true. And they helped create this tool that you're about to see. But we have a special guest today that is really going to help us kick this off because he is the incoming vice chair for the Economic Development Committee for MAG. Mayor Mike LaVault is here today, and in his role as mayor and as a member of the Economic Development Committee, he absolutely understands the importance of advancing early literacy and the opportunity a tool like Maplet will be to partners across the state. So please help me welcome Mayor Mike LaVault.
Okay, so when our moderator said you're about to see sexy, she of course was referring to the Maplet, the tool itself, not to me. I see that our keynote speaker has left. I think Ralph Smith is gone. I wanted to thank him for using one of my favorite words earlier, that is the word truculent. And I had to stop and think for a moment when he used that word about the context. And I decided that when you're talking about getting innovative, searching for ways to improve the education of our children, a little truculence is definitely in order. So my name is Mike LaVault. I'm the mayor of Youngtown, Arizona. I sometimes refer to it as Real Town. I'm also the immediate past chair of the MAG Regional Council and the incoming chairman of the MAG Economic Development Committee. Let me tell you a little bit about MAG first. MAG, of course, is the designated metropolitan planning organization and council of governments for this region. While MAG is deeply involved in issues like transportation and air quality and water quality, MAG's core mission is to strengthen both the greater Phoenix region and, by extension, the state of Arizona. It's in keeping with this core mission that several years ago, MAG formed an Economic Development Committee, or EDC. The EDC is comprised of some 36 members and includes elected officials, representatives from business, transportation, and education, as well as representatives from the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Arizona Department of Transportation, and the Governor's Office, all sitting at a common table and working to make our economy as vibrant and vital as possible. It quickly became obvious that one of the most important components of a strong economy is a ready, willing, and ably educated and trained workforce. That is one of the first demographics that prospective employers look for in analyzing the suitability of our region. And that's why MAG recognized that partnering on an early literacy data mapping project was supremely important. Literacy matters to our children's ability to succeed and to our region's ability to be globally competitive. Like you, I'm here because I believe it's not only possible, I believe it's imperative that each child learn to read well by the end of 3rd grade. Personally, I've given my time to providing remedial reading support for disadvantaged children, and as an elected official, I'm excited to see initiatives like Read On Arizona come to fruition, helping our communities do a better job of educating our children and young adults. Working with Read On Arizona on this Maplet tool has been a fantastic experience because I know it's a project that's poised to make our communities fundamentally better places to live. At MAG, in the depth of the valley of the Great Recession, we chose to reinvent ourselves to help our region be more competitive in the global marketplace. The Maplet tool, which you'll see today, is a great example of how we can apply quantitative skills in new and innovative ways. In the end, our residents benefit from having greater access to solid, salient information that can deeply affect and improve the quality of their lives. We must all continue to work together on projects like this because together we can create a better future for our children and for the greater Phoenix region and, by extension, the state of Arizona. Ben Franklin once said it well when he said, "We must all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately." Today marks a historic moment. For the first time ever, we will all have access to early literacy data on a robust interactive online mapping tool. Maplet features data you can use to make decisions that will improve outcomes for language and literacy throughout the state. This will have a profound and positive impact on Arizona. We use maps, of course, to help us find the direction that we want to move. We can use Maplet to help set our goals and courses of action. The Maricopa Association of Governments is honored to have worked with Read On Arizona and its many talented partners to create the Maplet tool and to offer it to you today. This is your site and your tool to create a better future for Arizona's children. We developed Maplet with Read On Arizona to support the Read On community sites throughout the state. The map makes it much easier to find and recognize schools that counterintuitively are performing well, often against the odds, as well as those that could improve performance and benefit from some assistance. Maplet is available online and will be maintained with the most current data available. I understand that it went live today on the Read On site, and I think tomorrow or the next day it's going to go live on the MAG website. This project would not be possible, of course, if it were not for the willingness of the data partners to look beyond organizational boundaries to see a common vision in which all children have an opportunity to read and thrive. I want to express MAG's deep gratitude to Read On Arizona, its many data partners, and Virginia G. Piper Charitable Association, Charitable Trust, for all being persistent enough to pioneer and weather the process that leads to this innovative approach. Thank you all for your commitment to our children and for helping them better learn to read and ultimately succeed. Each letter they learn, each word they read, each sentence they write brings them one step closer to fulfilling their potential in this global marketplace. I sincerely appreciate your efforts. At MAG, we stand side by side with you to achieve our common vision. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Anubhav Bagley, and he's going to give you a short live demo of the Maplet tool. Anubhav, are you standing in the wings? There he is.
Thank you everybody. Before I get started getting into the Maplet tool, there's no pressure on me. This is a live site. I've been asked to produce something that's sexy, so let's go for it. Before we get into that, thank you to Terry for giving a shout out to MAG, but really kudos go to Terry for taking the leadership on this project and getting us to do this. Along with that, the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust would not have been possible without the trust funding this project. And within the MAG team, I've got to thank Jason Howard, our GIS manager, but particularly Vern Wolfley. Vern came to MAG from the Dysart School District. This has been a labor of love for Vern. He spent evenings and weekends trying to get this done and would not have been possible without that. So without further ado, the site is live. It's on Read On Arizona's data center. So I'm going to start from here, and I'm going live on the site itself. So when you click on this site, that's what this launches. It starts getting you into this map. So we had started this project thinking that we're doing a site for Maricopa County itself, and we ended up building something statewide. So when you start looking at the site itself, it starts showing you a map of Arizona. There are a number of schools here. All these schools that are coming from Arizona Department of Education, they're all in the circles, there are schools there. Stars are the preschool sites itself. And then we have laid out a ton of census data sets. More than about 80 sites of census data sets are sitting here. Right now, it's showing you total population. The darker colors are the darker population, the higher population numbers. In terms of usage of the site itself, we've tried to build it very simplistic. It's something that looks and feels like Google Maps or Bing Maps. You can zoom in using this button on the side here on the left, or you can zoom in through your mouse. This set on the left side is all kinds of census maps that have been loaded here. Right now it's showing total population. You can start looking at what's percent female population, age groups, what's going on with the age groups, where's the population under 5. By the way, as you start looking at it, on the right side, you start seeing this legend, which we nerds like from a GIS site use this all the time. This tells you what the source is, what is the data set itself, where's the percent male population under 5, all those kind of details in there. We were talking about grandparent caregivers earlier. Here are the grandparent caregivers. This is the data that we have on grandparent caregivers. Again, these are all the data sets that are being pulled from the census. We're trying to keep these live, so these data sets come out every year, and that's how they're loaded on there. Look at linguistic isolation, what's going on with that, what's going on with families in poverty, percent of families below poverty. We've got all that kind of data sets itself. By the way, if you don't like the colors, we even let you change the colors. So you can do that on the fly. So as we start zooming in, you start seeing all kinds of more details start coming up on the site itself. I'm zooming into Central Phoenix right now. We're kind of in this area, in downtown Phoenix, this area. One of the other cool features we've added here is we've got aerial imagery under this site. So if you're exploring an area, trying to figure out what's going on with a particular area, why is it what it is, you can start looking at it from this slider. You can slide this, start looking at what the area, what's going on with that. Look at all the kinds of data sets behind it to evaluate all the general area. Now to the core piece, start getting into the elementary school. So I can click on this piece. I can see that's a preschool. It's a Fowler Elementary School. I can see there are 2 things there. There's also a school there. Let's look at the school. Let's find out more details about the school itself. We have data for the past 4 years on the enrollment. This is a preschool to grade 5. It's a full-day kindergarten school. It's a Title I school with about 95% of the kids getting a free and reduced lunch, a 6.6% chronic absence rate. It has 95% attendance rate, not absenteeism. It's a grade A school. And you start looking at what is the total enrollment, what is the K through 3 enrollment, that is the line there. Moving on, you can start looking at the student demographic. What's the racial ethnic composition of the school itself? Start looking at what's the Hispanic population versus white, black. How has that changed over time since 2011? It hasn't really changed much. What's going on with the second grade SAT 10 mean scores? What's happening with those? What's happening with the writing, reading, mathematics scores? How do those compare with the national norm? The area here is showing the national norm and what is trending within this school over time. You can even look at by different racial breakouts if there's enough data behind the scenes on that. There is Ames data, third grade Ames reading data, again, broken out by different categories, what the data is available to us. You can evaluate those over time. So starting in 2011, if you start looking at it, we were about 10% exceeding in all, and actually about 6% that were far below. Moving on to 2014, you start seeing that actually far below is only 1%, and exceeding actually has gone to 7%. So there's changes happening in the school, and you can start looking at what's going on with the school itself. We have the Ames passing rates for third grade Ames reading. What's the percentages for the school, and how does that compare to the state average? We've got some benchmark data for each of the grades. For kindergarten to third, what's the benchmark data behind that? The chronic absence data, again, also by different grades. So these are just some of the data sets that we've got pulled in here. Let's look at the other way that you can start looking at this is also searching. So you may not be just flying on the map itself, but you could look at and start searching for a school. So let's search for Brett Tarver Education Complex, see what's going on there. So this is a preschool that is right by, close to us here. Its current enrollment is 220. It's a early Head Start school participating in Quality First. It's a public school. We have all kinds of details. Now we start looking at the First Things First regional data there. So this is now looking at family participation. This data also exists at the elementary school, but this is a completely different geography that we've put this data from now. So this is now saying, well, question one, during the past week, how many days did you or other family members read stories to your kids? That gets you the data on that. There are a number of other questions that you can start looking at. The third one is more about how many books do you have at home or from the libraries. The other piece we have pulled in here, thanks to all the data partners, is health data coming from the primary care data sets, primary care areas. So this is looking at total births, what's happening with the area in terms of total births. The blue line is what's happening at the state, whereas green is what's happening in the particular area for this primary care area. There are different kinds of other data sets here. You can start looking at low birth weights paid by Medicaid, or you could look at asthma visits paid by Medicaid. Another thing let's look at, let's jump to another school. Let's go to Sierra Vista. So I'm typing Carmichael Elementary School. Let's find Carmichael Elementary School. So the tool now has zoomed in to Sierra Vista, Arizona. This is in Cochise County. We're looking at the Carmichael Elementary School, similar kind of data sets, what's happening with the enrollment in the area, what's happening with the student demographics. Again, over time, you can start looking at each of those pieces. This is also a Title I school with about 94% attendance rate. You can start looking at the chronic absence rates. First Things First data now, this is the same data set that I was talking about for the First Things First Council data, that's on there too. Similar kinds of data sets you could start now doing by districts. We have aggregated school districts and school district data. So if you were, let's say, since we are in Sierra Vista, let's look at Sierra Vista Unified District. Sierra Vista Unified District has 6 schools in the district in the database, because again, this database is only for K through 3 schools or schools that have K through 3. So these are all the elementary schools. These are the grades. This is how the letter grade that's been assigned, the enrollment. You can sort on all this data. You can start looking at, again, at an aggregate level, what's happening at a district itself. So if you're analyzing the district, you start looking at the analysis on the demographics, certain demographics, on how has that changed. If there's some factors contributing to some kind of education factors there, what's happening with the SAT 10 mean scores over time. This is definitely doing better over time. The Ames breakout data sets, again, since this is a larger sample size, one gets a much more detailed and much more sets of data sets here because we have a much larger sample size on this piece. You could look at county summaries if you'd like. You could have First Things First districts, and we could say, you know, let's look at Cochise County and start looking at the First Things First region council there. That gets you, tell you that there are 41 schools in the system there. These are what are the preschools, what's going on with the survey results. All of that data sets are in that. Finally, one of the other pieces, one of the other cool things that you can do, since we're playing on a live map with all kinds of data sets, once you've zoomed in, and you may not be just looking at any particular district, any particular boundary, but there's something that you want to customize, and you look at a customized boundary. So you can go in under on this side, select an area, say, I want to look at this particular area. Well, what the data set will do, what the tool will do, it'll select all the census tracts that is coming from the census data. Pull you all the schools that you selected in that. Now you have 57 schools. Each of those schools are listed here. You start looking at all the preschools. There are about 54 preschools that we looked at. You get a summary report from a population. We're talking about 302,000 people in this area. What is the age? What's the percent breakouts, race breakouts, ethnicity, linguistic isolation, all kinds of data sets now at a neighborhood level that you can start looking at. And also start looking at each of the selected census tracts. So anyone who is a census geek like us, you can start looking at all the census tracts. And as you start looking at each census tract and you start zooming around, you can start seeing what's going on with that. Well, I see Terry coming here, so that means my time's up. So I hope, Ralph, that is sexy enough for you.
So thank you again. And just, can we just give one more applause? You don't know the hard work behind this for the MAG team with our data integration task force. So what I was hoping, and so I'm going to introduce one of our members of our data integration task force, and we're just going to have a very short 10, 15-minute question and answer, because these are the folks that came together and really made something that nobody thought could happen, which is the sharing of data to make this project possible. So I'm going to actually ask Jason Feld, our moderator, at the end to take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're the sexy panel. Just in case you were wondering, okay.
Are we bringing sexy back?
We're bringing sexy back. We're going to loosen our ties. We know we've got about 15 minutes left, and there are some important questions that I'd like to raise to our group here, and hopefully you will join us in listening to their responses, and I will ask the guys to loosen their ties so that we can be as sexy as the data is here. Anubhav, you've already met. He's one of our colleagues and has had a major hand in putting this data set together. I have next to me my colleague for many years from the department, Rebecca Bolnick, who is the Chief Data Officer, and my other colleague, Bonagi Wasson, who is the Chief Technology Officer at the Mary Lou Fulton College of Education. So could you all just give them a quick round of applause before we start? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start with Barnaby, because I like his tie, and we'll go with that.
It's a tree, it grows.
Is it a tree? Does it really grow? A tree grows in Brooklyn. Okay. Bonnie, you've been on the Data Integration Task Force, and just from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about how the tool itself that we've all seen now will actually enhance early literacy in Arizona, or be a part of that plan, so that we can work more effectively in meeting some of the goals that have been outlined in Read On?
I came out here, I stepped out just to watch the reaction of the crowd. And I think what I'm going to share hopefully echoes some of what you were saying. Our initial reaction seeing the work when it rolled out was, are you kidding? That's just amazing. And it is amazing. It is groundbreaking. The dream of having information at your fingertips, complex sets that help you see the full literacy pipeline. Yes, you're trying to address third grade reading outcomes. How do you get to that point? How do you get to looking at all learning opportunities in front of you that go and transcend beyond kindergarten, beyond formal schooling? And this allows you to look at that, allows you to look at sets of information that you normally wouldn't involve when it came to literacy discussions. How do you then address some of the root pieces that are involved when a child is welcome into a home? What are the conditions and situations that you can help nurture, that you can help address, that you can help foster? That's what's brought into this tool, and hopefully this really sets a national discourse as to how you can embrace complex data sets, but bring them into a tangible outcome and goal. Again, breathtaking and groundbreaking.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. And Rebecca, you co-chaired our task force on this, and from your perspective in working in ADE, did we actually start out with this tool in mind? I mean, how did we get to this point? How did it evolve?
Most of the task force members who I wanted to thank. Some of you are in the audience. I couldn't quite see, but my co-chair from First Things First. We have membership from Piper and Jason. So we've got the vendor, the sort of private industry community. We've got universities. We've got a really wide range of folks on the task force. We've got DHS. And that was really important. And most of us, though, I should say, are from government. So no, we didn't think of this. Are you kidding? What? We couldn't even dream. No. I brought out the pamphlet, the report that came in all of our packets, because as I was going through my notes earlier, I was looking at this, and it's great. And challenge 2 was ours, and that's on page 7. The lack of information, the challenge statement is lack of information about critical factors involving early literacy. That was our challenge. And the read-on solution was to improve data integration and system linkages, focus on shared data and accountability systems. That is a huge charge. And I came in and I thought, oh, okay, well, if you guys just want data from me, great. Can you fill out the form and then I'll just go back and do my job. But this kind of product is what comes when you get that many great minds in a room together. And what we did, so actually to answer your question that you asked me, sorry, was not really, we didn't think of that first. What we did was we focused on what indicators and what data exist that could give someone a complete picture of early learning in a community. We had our read-on communities that were still sort of forming at the time, but we had that in mind. What information would you need to make the right decisions for your community and for the children in your community? And then we took that and we said, okay, let's come up with some great ideas, and what do we actually have? And so do we have the right people in the room? We got the right people in the room to see what data we had. Okay, well, here's all the data we have. What can we share? So then we're really thinking about privacy and all of those things, but balancing privacy with usefulness. We wanted it to be useful for the communities. So with all of that in mind, we came up with the data sets, and I think Terry mentioned this in the introduction, that they were in spreadsheets. Of course, we're infamous for our spreadsheets. But after seeing a tool like this, I don't think it's fair to anyone to provide spreadsheets anymore. And I'll tell you why, because the data is not sexy. What you in this audience do with that information is what will make it sexy.
Thank you, Rebecca. And so on that note, I'll go back to you then. Once you knew the data set that we were looking to move into something more elegant and sexy, outside of Excel spreadsheets, can you talk a little bit more about MAG's role in this process, your thinking? You guys have a reputation for doing this type of mapping, and I think we want to hear a little bit more about your role in actually bringing this tool to the read-on communities.
Absolutely. So actually, MAG, we're a regional planning organization, and we have a ton of data sets that we've been rolling with for years. And recently, as Mayor LaWalt was talking about, we got into the economic development side, and how do we take this data and turn this around for economic development purposes? There is a lot of art to it, and the big other piece is that you are taking a lot of data sets and making it visual, and when you start looking at something that's on a map that's visual, it makes a very different impact to you. So our team, we've been building a lot of these tools. Currently, we have 7 or 8 tools live by different areas. And so we already had the tools ready, and actually most of these tools are primarily been built in-house. So the code and everything is all ours. We've been working on this forever. The biggest challenge was bringing the data in, getting all that data integrated into a system that works together. And now we are able to bring this thing into a piece that can get that done. So just getting those data sets, we're talking about 1,200 some schools, 1,200 some elementary schools, 1,200 some preschools. I was counting this thing yesterday, and we're looking at more than 300 data elements. So now more than 300 data elements by school, et cetera, starts getting to be a lot of information Now it's the big challenge is how do you take that and make some sense out of it, start doing those analysis, and keep this as a work that continues going. And that's what we've been doing with the other tools, that we learn from one time and then we move on and build these as a second version and third version. Currently, I think we are in our third phase of our existing tools that we've been going on. The other piece that we did with this was also build, for the first time, we built a manual on how to use the tools. And that's been a good thing. I could not show that right now, but that is also live, and there is a manual that gets into all kinds of details on the usage and the intricacies of the tool itself.
Great. And my understanding is that this is not a static system, that in fact it is designed so that the data is updated annually, and as the community starts to use it and you get feedback, in fact, changes will occur. So there's a strong relationship between the way in which data is presented, what data is presented, and how stakeholders across the read-on communities will actually use the data.
That is absolutely so true, because a tool is only valuable if the data is live and the data is real. And that is what will keep this valuable. And so we do get the census data on an ongoing basis. There's a census product that comes out every year. And then we'll be working with the data partners to bring in the data sets from all these other pieces and keep this thing updated and then build as we go from there.
Right. Thank you. And then back to you again, Rebecca. So we're looking at data sets. Let's take, for example, chronic absences. Well, one, how is it defined? What are your thoughts on how that was able to be a part of this project? And I think by talking about that, we get an example of the complexity of choosing the data sets, getting the data in, and then being able to analyze it in a way that it has value for everybody. So can you talk a little bit about chronic absences as one example of the data set?
Sure. So when we did that inventory initially of what data we had and what would be useful for our communities, chronic absence, as an example, was one. Some of these, total enrollment and the Ames scores, things like that, were pretty much no-brainer from our data sets. But chronic absence, for example, was a good one because that showed up over and over in the research and on the various inventories throughout the communities and the systems and the research that was looking at early literacy. And we talked about that earlier on this afternoon. So for the state of Arizona, that was not something that ADE has a requirement to report, things like that. So it was an example of a way that this data also was a feedback loop for us, that there were critical elements, data elements that we as a state need to be looking at, that communities need to be looking at, and that schools need to be looking at. And I know earlier at the break, I was talking with some of my friends from the Valley of the Sun United Way. They've got a chronic absenteeism initiative, and these types of data need to be available. And so to have that catalyst for us as a state to even report it, and then for schools who might not have realized that they should be looking at it, or communities that didn't realize that they had that kind of problem, because we've had to report under No Child Left Behind on the attendance rate, which is not the inverse of chronic absence. And that has been there for years. Everybody gets their 95% attendance rate, and everything's fine. Well, everything's not fine when you look at the chronic absence. So that was a really good example, and it took for us at ADE to talk about how should we define this, how should we calculate it. Sorry, where's Amy? She went back and forth with me like 7 times on how we actually did that calculation. But that also, I think, speaks to, at least from our perspective, and I know that the other partners who contributed data also really wanted to be thoughtful and deliberate about the data that was here to make sure, again, that it was useful, because it's that usefulness that's sexy. I don't know, how many times are we going to say sexy?
I don't know. We're going to say it one more time.
Okay.
Okay. And going back to Bonavie, the last question I have really, so you're looking at this data set from the perspective of someone working in a university, in a college of education. Not that you would be a data geek or an information technology geek, but generally people think that data is for people that deal with data, and it is boring, it is not sexy. I often hear when I speak with school districts or communities that we're data rich and implementation poor. And is the data valuable for the different stakeholders, not just the academics, not just the individuals who are looking to conduct analysis and put out some report. So from your perch, and you connect out to all different types of teams, can you give us a sense of what you hope the various partners in the community will take away from what they've seen in Maplet today, and how they might begin to use it to benefit all the stakeholders in their own community?
Easy. And I think it's 3 points. Look around. All the empty seats, those are people that you need to reach out to. So the most important parts that you have in front of you is this work has been brought together. And I've seen and heard a lot of ideas about if we only had access to this data set and access to this data set and information here, then we'd be able to solve all the problems and woes. Well, you have the start of that idea here, and from going from a wish to a tangible tool set is a feat of itself. So that's the first one. Normally this does not happen. Magic does not happen, sir. Second, when it does happen, it gives you now an ability to be able to start having discussions with one another, with researchers and practitioners, in a fashion that you would not have done before. Because you may have your own set and fiefdom of, this is the insight I have to this discussion, while my colleague may have a different set and fiefdom of information that's what they bring to this discussion. You now have it all in front of you. So now the larger discussion, the larger focus is for you to move discourse into an area where you're not only looking at the singularity of something, but you're looking at the complex interdependencies of items. And that's what you really are now challenged. And thirdly, and that's where the empty seats come into play, you will only benefit from this how much you put into it. So this work has been done, but the constant improvement, that renewal, that expansion will only happen if, 1, you come back to this watering hole, 2, you hold us accountable to see what else you need, and then 3, you hold everyone else who's not here accountable in that usage and that larger discussion. So that's what I hope. I truly hope that you come out of this empowered and believing that, yes, you have more in front of you to be able to carry out your good work.
Thanks, Badri. And to Anubhav and then to Rebecca, last question. I'm not going to ask you what your favorite children's book is. We've gone on that road already today.
I was so ready.
So I know you were ready for that question, but you can answer it anyway. But I think I have what I would consider to be a more important question for both of you, and Barnaby kind of led into it. I'm less interested in knowing what your favorite book is. I'm more interested in knowing what, as an author, you would write as the next chapter in using this data in our read-on communities.
That's very interesting. I would say just how do we take this data, make some sense out of this, now start extracting that information that is really needed to make those decisions. Because the reality is out in the schools and the districts, et cetera, people do not have the time to start digging through the data sets itself. But what is it that you're looking for? And how do we, as from the technology side, make it easier for you to look at that and say, aha, I can make that decision.
Thank you. And I do want to know your favorite children's book, but still.
Are you my mother?
Oh.
So, oh, wow. So I'm trying to think now, because I'm, real creative, right? So I'm like, okay, what kind of book would it be? And would it be first person or third person? And what would the storyline be about? So I'm actually thinking, if this were a book, the next chapter, I think, would be maybe a case study or some example of a read-on community and following their group, and they looked at the data and they really dug into it and they found the area of need in their community, that they had that light bulb moment, the aha moment, and they said, oh my gosh, we have this area in our geography that is a, they talk about food islands where you don't have fresh fruits, that it's a preschool island, and we need to go into that community. It's a book island or something, right? And I can't remember who it was that was talking about in their community. They have pop-up classrooms at the grocery stores and then there's some kid who participates in that pop-up classroom at the grocery store because the map helped their Read On community find that island, and he's got books now, and he becomes the next XYZ, great leader, great inventor, and then he teaches his sister how to read and she becomes the president. That's how the book would, I think that's how it would finish, that she would
Perfect.
become the president.
Perfect.
That was great.
And to close, my wish and last chapter to all of you here today, and as we talked about those that you're going to talk to after this meeting, and we'll be checking on you because we'll be tracking you with the data, is that you always remember that data is information, and information is empowering. And the goal of using data in a read-on community, at least my perspective, is to, in fact, empower children as learners, and families and teachers as leaders and educators, so that we can all grow together as a state and as a community. And for those of us on the SEXY panel, we thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
All right. Ralph, did I promise and deliver? Come on. Come on. Come on. So we have packed an afternoon full, and I hope that you have gotten some new information and, most importantly, are inspired to continue to battle to advance early literacy for Arizona's children. We know what works, and we've put a lot of the key things in place to get us there. An intense focus on third grade reading and the pipeline, the continuum from birth through the end of third grade. We've raised the bar for proficiency. We have an increased understanding of the importance of school readiness and increased quality early learning opportunities in the home, childcare sites, and other settings. We just need to be committed to keeping our eye on the prize and doing what is best for our youngest and most vulnerable citizens. So you knew this time was coming. This day would not have been possible without a lot of people that helped put this on. So I just want to take a few minutes to thank all the individuals who got behind the idea of going bigger this year with the Read On Summit and help make it happen. It truly takes a village. A quick thanks to our founding partners, the Arizona Department of Education, First Things First, Head Start State Collaboration Office, Arizona Community Foundation, Helios Education Foundation, and Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust for their ongoing dedication and support. There's an amazing First Things First team that helped put their own summit on and then said, sure, let's add this little Read On Summit onto that. So to Michelle Katona, Liz Barker, Dan Puglisi, who is my better half, Deanna Carrera, Dave Ryder, and many others, thank you immensely. To the Office of the Governor, Dawn Wallace, for her help. Karen Leland, who's been behind the curtain the whole entire time and co-chairs our communications working group, for her amazing support. Renee Corey, who is my extension and usually knows the answer before I do. And all of you community leads out there of the 24 Read On communities, and I know we're going to be growing past that, and the working groups of Read On Arizona who make all of these challenges seem seamlessly able to be overcome, and so many more that without your help this day would not have been possible. So thank you all for coming. We look forward to working with you in the next phase of the work to advance early literacy for Arizona's children. Thank you. Hello? Hello? I've been told to ask you to all drive safely because there is a weather warning. Evidently, there is a dust storm or a haboob on track. So please just be careful.